Well, the controversy over the Rafale deal is refusing to go away despite the government's various clarifications and statements over the weekend. Joining us on NDTV today is the former Foreign Minister, former Finance Minister of India, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, someone who along with Arun Shourie had taken a very strong position on this particular deal and the need for it to be probed. Mr. Sinha, thank you for speaking to us. Can I ask you whether any of the arguments that have been made over the weekend, particularly by Mr. Jaitley on Sunday, have they convinced you at all that this matter needs to rest?
No, I am sorry, I am not convinced. You see, we are sidestepping the main issue. If somebody is talking of oranges, somebody else is talking of apples, the two are not comparable, and a lot of confusion is being created in the meanwhile. I would also like to add that the standard of discourse on this issue has descended very low, and my request to all the parties concerned will be to respect the dignity of a public discourse. Calling each other names doesn't lead us anywhere. But coming back to the point that you asked me, no, I am not convinced at all, because we are not addressing the main issue.
And to you, what is that main issue now? That is that why was Anil Ambani's Reliance chosen for this deal all of a sudden?
Well, that is one, and there are a number of other issues which have got somewhat sidelined because of this new disclosure that former President Hollande has made, that Anil Ambani's firm's name was suggested by the Indian side and he had no choice in the matter. Now, that is a very serious allegation in view of all the denials which have been trotted out in the past by the government. Now, the government, like the Finance Minister said, cannot hide behind the fact that Rahul Gandhi and Hollande are in cahoots, or that we are the only ones talking truth in this world, everyone else is a liar, or whatever appellations they might like to throw at the people who are raising this. So the point is that the only person who can deny this, whether something like this transpired, is the Prime Minister of India, because it was the Prime Minister of India who talked to Hollande in the first instance, and he is not saying anything about it. So Arun Jaitley was not there, nobody else was there. It was a deal between the President of France and the Prime Minister of India, and therefore if the former President of France, who was party to the deal, is making a statement, that statement can be challenged only by the Prime Minister of India, and he is absolutely quiet.
So you're clearly saying that the Prime Minister himself needs to speak on this, and that is important actually, because it was the then Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar who also said that this was a deal that the Prime Minister struck. But Mr. Sinha, I just want to bring to your attention a couple of important things that have come to light in the last few days as we all try to revisit the timelines of April 2015. And you've been a foreign minister yourself. Now, I will first draw your attention to a statement that the then Foreign Secretary made on the eve of Mr. Modi's visit, where this deal was announced. Now, Mr. Modi announced this deal in France on the 10th of April 2015. On the 8th of April, the then Foreign Secretary Dr. Jaishankar held his customary press conference with reporters, where, and I'm quoting him here, he says that in terms of Rafale, my understanding is that there are discussions underway between the French company, our Ministry of Defence, the HAL, which is involved in this. These are technical, detailed discussions. We don't mix up leadership level visits with detailed, deep details of ongoing defence contracts. What do you make of that statement? I mean, this is exactly 2 days before the deal was announced with Anil Ambani's Reliance, that the Foreign Secretary of India is on record telling reporters that Hindustan Aeronautics is still very much part of this deal.
This is very, very important, Nidhi, because as you said, this was just 2 days before the joint statement was issued in Paris, and after discussions between the President and the Prime Minister. And all my experience of such visits, and I have been part of many such visits when Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, my experience would suggest that the joint statement or joint communique is worked out and cast in stone, actually, well before the Prime Minister arrives in some capital. And a high official like the Foreign Secretary of India would not be taken by surprise on an issue of this kind. And from the statement that he has made, it is quite clear that he was completely in the dark about what was in the mind of the Prime Minister. And all this happened when the Prime Minister landed in Paris, and within the next 48 hours, the joint communique was amended to include the paragraph on purchase of 36 Rafale fighter jets. So quite clearly, this came up only between the Prime Minister and the President when the two engaged in discussions. Nobody else had any idea. And let me also tell you that the defense procurement procedure in our country, after all that has happened to and all the allegations which have been made, is today cast in stone. That also is cast in stone, and therefore any departure is not permitted. Not even the Prime Minister of India can ride roughshod over the procedure which has been prescribed. And it appears that that's exactly what the Prime Minister did. The Air Force was not on board, the Defense Ministry was not on board, the Defense Minister was not on board, and suddenly a major surprise was sprung on all of them when the Prime Minister arrived at this deal of buying 36 Rafale jets from France.
What do you make of the statements, though, made by the French government and by Dassault itself? I mean, of course, Dassault wouldn't want to lose a huge contract like this, and I guess in a sense one expected, their statement. But, today also we have, a senior French minister telling French radio, that they were not happy with Mr. Hollande's statements, that it could affect India-France ties, and yet he doesn't contradict him either.
Yeah, so the truth is something which cannot be contradicted. The French know the truth. Our own government also knows the truth. They are just trying to conceal it. Nobody can contradict Hollande about what he has said because he's spoken the truth. And, coming back to the offset partner, it's quite clear that all the rules were violated in Dassault choosing Reliance Defense as a partner. The world knows that it was a company which had been registered just a few days ago. It did not have the best track record. And why would France, in the first instance, any company in France, and especially like one like Dassault, will choose a partner like that?
But Mr. Sinha, can I ask you that do you not have some questions also for Mr. Hollande about the fact that he has been facing some scrutiny over whether there was a quid pro quo for his partner here? She was making a film, the Reliance group, Anil Ambani's Reliance invested money in that, and Arun Jaitley and the government have talked about that in their defense as well, that he is essentially trying to defend himself against allegations of conflict of interest, etc. Could that not be a possibility? Is that not something we need to also ask of Mr. Hollande?
No, we are not ruling it out, and someday I am sure somebody is going to ask Mr. Hollande about this. He has already said that he was not even aware that Reliance Entertainment, or whatever the name that company is, was in touch with that person. But the point is that, I'll go back to the argument that I had given earlier. that there are only two people who can speak the truth in this matter. One has spoken what he considers to be the truth, namely the former President Hollande of France. Now it's the turn of our Prime Minister to say whether anything of this kind happened or did not happen. His complete silence on this issue is baffling.
All right, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, thanks very much for joining us. You're saying there that the Prime Minister is the one who needs to speak out on this and not remain silent on this. Certainly, as you also pointed out, beyond the political rhetoric, there are some important questions that the government needs to answer, and we do hope that we do get answers to those. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.